Today I want to tell you a bit more about liquid watercolors because they're really fun to use and I think they feel quite special. So let's have a look. Liquid watercolors are just that. They are watercolors but in a liquid form, so they come in a bottle. They're a bit similar to inks and they usually have like a little dropper. Let's make sure I don't drip. A little dropper that you can use to apply your ink with. And you can add it to a palette first and apply it with a brush or add it straight to your paper. What I really like about liquid watercolor is the pushing effect that it has. So it sort of pushes the water out of the way and it shoots out. So if I add a bit of water to the paper here, so I'll do the same next to it. I make a bit of a star shape for like a flowery shape. There we go. So I added a bit of water to my paper. If I add normal watercolors, so if I add a bit of green watery watercolors here to the middle, you can see that slowly flows out. So I can add a little bit more. And it will slowly flow out and go into all the edges where I added the water. When I do the same with the liquid watercolor though, oh, see how that shoots out? It really creates a push. And that's really fun. It moves much faster than sort of normal watercolors. If I want to create a similar page like this, but then in liquid watercolors, I would use my dark, this is a black color, liquid watercolor. And I could maybe add in some green or some blue as well to add a little bit of color. So what I would do is take my brush and just start with some water here along the middle. So, and then maybe add some water here to the top. So I'm dragging out a few bits and pieces of that water. So I'm dragging that to the top and also to the bottom. So there is some dry areas in there as well. So, there we go. I want a little bit more water here. So. If I now take my liquid watercolor, I'll give it a good shake. So open it and I'll make sure that there is a bit of ink in that dripper. I can apply that to the middle. See, there we go. Lovely. I love how it shoots up and creates these marks. Maybe I'll add a little bit here, a little bit there. And you can always add a bit more water to this as well. So, I love the shooting out effect. That is just so much fun to do. So now with a little bit of extra water, I manipulate my inks. So, I don't want this line to be quite so prominent, so I'll make it a little bit wet. Same here. There we go. And if I wanted to add a little bit of color to it, I could take a bit of blue and then just drop in a little bit of color. There we go. This is all quite wet, so I'll have to let it dry a little bit. I'll use my hair dryer. Just with the tip of my brush, I might add a few lines, just sort of playing with all this wet paint on the paper, just to see what happens. I'm going to just quickly make it dry using my hair dryer, and I'll be back in a few seconds once everything is dry. You can see how the picture is almost dry. There's a few slight like wet blobs of paint still on the paper, and I'm going to do a second layer because I want to have a bit of that horizon feel. I really love the textures. I love how the blue is mixed up with the black and created this dark teal color. So what I'm going to do is just add water here to the middle. So just that middle line again, maybe a little bit wider here and there. So, because this is watercolor, you can always reactivate the layers underneath. So there we go. And I'm going to add a little bit more of this dark color to that. So I'm not even squeezing it, I'm just touching it with the tip. So I'm going to let this dry again. So keeping it simple, I'll close this bottle. So I'm going to let this dry, and I feel like there's a bit of a misty, magical landscape there already. So most of it is dry. I just love the textures. I've had so much fun with this. And with this Faber-Castell pen, I'm just going to add a little bit of some marks here in the middle, just to tidy things up a little bit. So I'll make the line a bit more precise. Adding some lines up and down. So you can see my pen is a bit grey, so it's a little bit lighter than the ink. But I do think it creates a little bit of this sort of misty landscape, eerie picture. So, and with my white gel pen, I'm just adding a little light shape of a little animal there. Just something that catches your eye and that draws your eye in. So there we go. This is a picture in liquid watercolor. I am going to do another one. So yeah, let me know what you think. If you've ever tried this material, if you want to do it again, I'm going to do a second one which is slightly more colorful. But yeah, first picture done. For this next picture, I'm going to use this last page in this sketchbook. This is the sort of outer page. It's not watercolor paper, so I'm going to do something here. And I want to do something that fits the sort of atmosphere of this sketchbook, because there's lots of like loose, scribbly, playful, abstract shapes in here. So I wanted to do something that sort of fits that line of painting, something that fits the sketchbook, and something really relaxing and fun. So I'm just taking my brush. All I need is my liquid watercolors that I showed you before, some water and a brush. So I'm taking my brush and I'm starting quite light from the inside out to do a spiral shape. So I'm starting with a dot. Can you see that? Yeah. I'm starting with a dot, and then from there I'm going to take it out and create a spiral shape outwards. So, and I want the water to sit on the paper quite thickly, so it's almost like a little river going there. And you can do this really thinly first and then add a little bit more water. And I want to show you something that the liquid watercolors work really great for. So this takes a little bit of paying attention. So you can join in using normal watercolors as well. The effect is just going to be a little bit less intense, but you can do this with just normal plain watercolors as well. So, I think this is the last circle. I'll make it a bit more wet here. I don't know if you can really tell on camera. I think you can see it, but it is a little bit invisible, painting with just water. So, I think this is going to be the end. I'll make that a little bit bigger. So, just making sure it's a little bit wet everywhere. It hasn't dried yet. Okay, there we go. So I have my water spiral. You can see I made the water quite thick. There's like a proper little bubble on the top. I'm just going to take some liquid watercolor. I'm taking this pink magenta tone. I'm just dropping in a bit of water. See, there we go. I might do a few more. So one here, one there, maybe at the end here as well. So just let that shoot out and dry. So you can do this with other watercolors as well. It's just that the liquid watercolor interacts with the water so beautifully. Now I'm taking some yellow and I'm pushing that in as well. You can see that that has a bit of an effect on the pink as well. So suddenly you can see the spiral, you can see how the water moves it around. Maybe a bit of green. So. There we go. Should I do a bit of blue as well? There we go. I think I'm just going to let it dry now. Do we want any more pink? The pink was the first color. I think it has sort of diluted a little bit. So, there we go. I'm just going to let this dry naturally, because if I use a hairdryer, it very likely will mess up the shape. So I'm just going to make myself a cup of tea and I'll come back and then hopefully it's dry. oh no, I just went to make myself a cup of tea and I came back and clearly my water bubble sort of broke and I had this big blob coming off the side. But not to worry, I'll just take a bit of paper and I will just soak up that extra paint. So, there we go. We are not perfectionists here. So, there we go. So you can see it starts to dry lovely and these wonderful sort of mixes of colors start to create. At this stage, when it's a little bit wet still, you can add some more color. So I can take a bit of yellow and add that to the mix because it is still wet, it will still move around. So you can still make changes to this and see what happens. So there we go. So I'm just going to wait for another few minutes, let it dry, and then I'll be back to show you what the final result is. Something that you can do is take a brush and add like extra marks on the side. So you can take the back of the brush and create some fluid marks. So you can drag the colors. So you can create some extra puffs if you want it. And I'm just using the stick. I'm using the back of the brush for that. If you wanted to create something a bit more fluid and less precise. Or if you have a few blobs that sort of didn't work out that well anyway, you can actually embrace that and then create a slightly more natural flowy shape. So, see, there we go. Well, let's let this dry and I'll be back in a few moments to look at what it looks like now. There we go. We are completely dry. This is what the picture looks like now. I do think it can be really surprising what sort of results you get when you use liquid watercolors. You can see I used the drips to color this page a little bit because this is just the end page. It's not a proper watercolor sheet. And I had so much fun doing this. I find this really relaxing and just mesmerizing to see what happens with watercolors without any expectations of creating something perfect. So I have lots of fun when I do exercises like this. Let me know what you think, if you've ever tried liquid watercolors or if you would like to try this just using normal watercolors, because you can absolutely do that as well. And I will see you soon for another art materials review.